In this video, we're going to tackle the age-old question, can you fix bad posture? Now, to do this, we're actually going to go through a real live case study with me as the subject. I'm going to show you a very common postural deviation called lateral pelvic tilt. I'm going to show you a couple of key exercises that I use to fix this. And in the process of doing this, we're going to answer some other questions and address some more philosophical concerns. Like, is there such thing as bad posture? Is this something you should work on? Is there a downside to working on this? And what exactly should we do to try to fix posture? And by the end of the video, hopefully you'll have an idea of if fixing bad posture is even something you want to do, and if it is something you want to do, how you might best go about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So for those of you who don't know, a lateral pelvic tilt is essentially a hip hike. So if we were looking at this pelvis, it's this side that's hiked up. We'd say this is a right lateral pelvic tilt. And I've done videos in the past about how to address this before and what the underlying reasons are for a left versus a right lateral pelvic tilt. But for the sake of this video, just know that it's most common on the right, and I tend to have a right lateral pelvic tilt historically and in this video that we're going to be doing today. So you'll see this picture coming up here of me. This is back in 2018. I have a right lateral pelvic tilt here, and I was in chronic pain at this point. It had been about 8 or 9 years. And my thought process at this time was that the reason I was in pain was because I had these muscle imbalances that were perpetuating faulty movement patterns that were manifesting visually in my posture, and that is the reason for my pain. So I thought that if I could work on my posture and improve these muscle imbalances, then the pain would go away. And I worked a lot on posture. I really did a deep dive and started learning all about the asymmetrical patterns of the body and started applying these techniques. Now, in the beginning, I saw a lot of gains, but I ran into a roadblock where I couldn't make any further progress and then actually started experiencing increased symptoms from doing posture-based exercises. So I talk a lot about this in other videos. So if you want more information on why this might be the case, you can go to some of the other videos on this channel, especially the ones that talk about rehab purgatory. But my major point here is that my assumption was not quite correct, because one of the things that I noticed was that when I did breathing type drills that were separate from my posture exercises, I actually would also get a similar benefit. And so really, I think the reason posture exercises work is because they get us to reconnect and feel our body in this open and curious way that allows us to bring our threat detection mechanism down, and that tends to alleviate anxiety, pain, and symptoms. So if you think you might be in that boat, you've been doing posture exercises for the reason of alleviating pain, and it's either not working or making you feel worse, then you might want to start by taking my Breathwork Breakthrough 7-Day Challenge. There's a link for that down below in the description. It's a 7-day Breathwork challenge, and that's probably what you'll need to be able to access a portal from tension and pain to a more pain-free, anxiety-free state. So now the reason that I'm bringing up this point of posture and pain not necessarily being correlated is because I'm going to show you two pictures that look very similar, but in one I'm in intractable chronic pain, and in one I've been living a pain-free life for years. So one was taken 8 years ago and the other one was actually taken this morning. And I want to illustrate that there's some context around these pictures that is more important than just the static visual representation. Now the difference in context around these two pictures is that this old picture shows my default position that I would always be in just as a matter of existing. I had a lot of tension that was being generated from underlying stressors, and I'd feel like I got pulled into that position. Now, I could look at that position as being bad and try to fix it, but what actually made the difference was addressing those underlying stressors. You see, the body always wants to create some sort of reliable position or some sense of stability. When we have things that are stressing us in our lives, we need to be able to deal with that so that the body doesn't just pull us into that stable and reliable position and keep us stuck there. Now today, being pain-free, I've addressed a lot of those underlying stressors and understand my body a whole lot better. But there's still times that my body wants to use that stability and that reliability, and this comes out especially in the context of exercise. So when does this happen in exercise? Well, it's typically going to happen when things get heavy. But when I go heavy, I do tend to reinforce this right lateral pelvic tilt. So yesterday I was doing a little bit of lifting and I was actually squatting, and I was squatting pretty heavy, and I even went to failure on a couple of reps. So we can see here that I'm actually failing the rep, and then I had to get the bar back up to the rack, which required a lot of effort. And if I had to venture a guess, what was probably happening is my pelvis was probably hiking up on the right as I was lateralizing a little bit more over my right side to get that reliability and stability. So we can see here, there's a little bit of a video that usually shows what will happen when I start to lift heavy, and it's that right hip hiking up a little bit as I push down into the ground. And again, this is a force production oriented strategy. This isn't something that's due to underlying stressors, but this is just a reliable and stable way for my body to try to put force into the ground. I could micromanage and try not to let this happen, but that would probably prevent me from lifting. I love lifting. Lifting has a lot of other benefits. So instead of obsessing about that, what I do is I lift, I progress myself appropriately within my lifting, and then if I feel like I need to open up some mobility afterwards, then I'll use something like more of a restorative activity. But what I don't do is obsess about my position and stay stuck in rehab purgatory, trying to get a perfect position or find the perfect exercise, or blaming my posture on pain and then preventing myself from getting back to the activities I actually like to do. Okay, so with that being said, we got the right lateral pelvic tilt today, which is happening in the context of lifting. So if this is the case, what we want to do is we want to find a way to recapture a position where we don't get that hip hike on the right side. Now, one of the most popular exercises that I've seen on the internet, I've seen it shared by multiple coaches, is this type of exercise where we're going to have the foot elevated so that we're able to reach this side away. This is going to open up the right side of the pelvis and increase stability on the left side of the pelvis. This is a perfectly good exercise, but I want to do it in real time with you here, and I'm going to do it about to the level of competence that I see done by somebody that I coach. And you're going to see in real time the degree of results, or maybe lack thereof, that I get from this activity. We'll talk about how I could have potentially done this better so that if you want to do this activity, you can also get a little bit better at it. But what I want to illustrate is that afterwards, we're showing a little bit more of a simple activity, and we're going to compare the results after that activity to the initial one. And I think you're going to see that more complex and more intricate is not always better. So let's go ahead and jump into that clip, and we can look at that first exercise here. So the million-dollar question is, can I use an exercise to fix this postural deviation of lateral pelvic tilt or hip hiking? So if I get into this position here, I can use this top leg to reach to then bring this pelvis down from its hiked up position. So starting here, if I reach with the leg away, I can then unhike it. And then we're also going to want to deal with the muscles here to be able to tighten and come away from the ground, which is going to open this space here, which was previously compressed. Then I can reinforce stability on the bottom side by pushing into the outside of the foot and slightly lifting the knee up. Now this is going to free up the right side of the pelvis to feel like I could lift this leg if I wanted to without losing this bottom position. And then I could get into this position and do some breathing. Gentle in through the nose. And then as I exhale, I could push down through the left foot as I continue to reach away with the right foot. It's going to open up this side as it causes me to maintain stability on the left side all the way from the rib cage down through the pelvis. I can repeat that. Inhaling, feeling this side opening, then exhaling, reaching away. Get a little bit of glute activation on the right side, a little bit of inner thigh on the left side, a little bit of oblique on the left side. Then let's get up and let's see if we made some changes. All right, so as we see, we have these after pictures compared to the before pictures, and there's a little bit of a difference there. There's some slight improvement, but you still see that hip hike on the right side. So this was not a complete alleviation of that right hip hike. I think what would have helped more is having something to push off of with that right foot. So we put the right foot up against a wall. That would have helped. And the other thing to look at here is that left lower rib cage was kind of sagging to the ground. If we pulled that up away from the ground and contracted the left obliques a little bit more, that would have probably helped to release things on that right side and allow that pelvis to come down a little bit further. So now with that being said, let's go ahead and look at this second variation, and then we'll recap afterwards. All right, so now we're going to try a split squat here and see how the results from this compare to the results of doing more of the restorative type exercise. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to be conscious of the fact that I've got that little bit of a tendency to hike that hip on that right side. So as I come down here, I'm going to try to keep the pelvis level. going to come down only as far as I can without hiking that hip, which right now feels like it's about here. I'm going to consciously reach down towards the ground with the sit bone, and then I'm going to hold this. Doing some easy breaths. And my attention is just on keeping that pelvis level and most of the weight in the right foot. I'm going to feel a lot of sensation in the quad, in the glute, maybe even in the lower back on this side. I'm just thinking of allowing this to drop as I'm in the loaded position. Kind of relaxing into the tension. Whew, that's a workout. Okay, I'm probably gonna do that 2 more times, and then we're gonna see how I look afterwards after doing this compared to the more restorative activity. All right, so as you can see, we got a much more level pelvis here, and I actually loaded that activity up, and it was much more simple, had much less cueing involved. And what happened is I held that position and I let my body self-organize around that stimulus. There wasn't as much for me to keep track of cognitively, and it was more trusting my body to be able to respond to the loading. So the analysis here was not happening during the exercise, but it was actually happening before the exercise. And this is really what I'd recommend overall, and I think this is why there's a downside to trying to improve posture through posture exercises, because it can get really complex, it can put you in your head, disconnect you from your body, and the next thing you know, you have more tension and more symptoms. So I would suggest that before you jump to something super complex, master the basics with the breathwork, take that breathwork breakthrough 7-day challenge, then get some basic restorative positions with some simple cues so you can actually reconnect with your body and you don't get stuck in your head, and then progress those up through adding a little bit of load. As you do that, your body's going to learn to self-organize around what you're planning, not just keep you stuck in your head and overthinking it with a million cues while you're actually doing the exercise. And this kind of leads us into a point about what is good posture and what is bad posture. So many of us think that good posture means a symmetrical position, so that if we were looking at someone, we'd see perfect symmetry. But another way to define good posture would be that you have a fluid ability to change positions into many positions so that you have maximum movement fluidity and movement options at your disposal. Now, if you had to give me a choice between being perfectly symmetrical but unable to move freely and being a little bit more asymmetrical and being able to move as freely as I wanted, I think we all know which one I would choose. But if you're someone who's listening to those two options and you're thinking that you'd choose the former, then I think there's some deeper questions to ask about what your motivations are for working on posture in the first place. If your motivations are just to look better, then you actually might be dealing with a self-esteem related issue, and it's better to acknowledge that self-esteem related issue, start there, accept those uncomfortable feelings, and then you can start to take some action to actually change the visual representation, which will probably include some amount of movement practice and some amount of increasing your awareness of your body as a whole. So to just recap what we've talked about today, there's a million ways to address posture, and when it comes to things like a right lateral pelvic tilt, this may or may not be something that you actually need to address depending on your goals. So if your goals are to alleviate pain, you might want to take a step back and actually ask yourself if that pain itself is due to posture or if there's underlying stressors that might be causing the posture issue. So you're just seeing the posture as another cue to look to your body and listen to what's going on and take stock of what might be going on in your life that might be causing you to get into these patterns. Now, with all that being said, I think posture can be fixed in a sense, but I think fixing posture is actually learning to reconnect with the body, be able to demonstrate a wide range of positions, not just trying to get into one particular position. And I think if you can have all those options at your disposal over time, what you'll find is that relative to the activities you're doing during the day and those activity demands and your capacity to actually perform those activities, you'll be able to demonstrate a much more equal left and right strategy, which is going to manifest as more symmetry at rest. But in certain contexts, you'll have to leverage that natural asymmetry, and that can temporarily bring you into a more asymmetrical position. So hopefully this all makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below in the comments section. If you like this video, make sure to like it. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you'll know when I upload a new video. And if you haven't already, go down to the link in the description, take my Breathwork breakthrough. You can use that to regulate your nervous system, reduce tension, and improve posture. So until next time, thanks a lot for watching. Peace.